Episode 79. A man strolls comfortably down the street. The dog seems impatient with his speed, as the August sunset momentarily blinds me. Greetings, and welcome into the Pawtuxet General. I am your host, Jess. This week, we celebrate seasonal fruits and vegetables, and some traditional methods for using them up while we still have them fresh. We're going to make a refreshing and happy-making watermelon basil margarita. Then we will discuss pesto, something I've been making lately, what it is, where it's from, and a fresh spaghetti with lemon pesto. Not to mention a special house-on-the-corner reading of Edgar Allan Poe's The Cask of Amontillado. A fantastic combination, but first, I must thank our Patreon subscribers. These Rhode Island-loving folk are the hot dogs and beans, the party pizza strips, the clam cakes and chowder, the coffee cabinets, the wieners and fries, and frozen lemonade at the Rhode Island party that is the Pawtuxet General. Without them, we would just be another Tuesday night, so thank you. If you would like to join our Pawtuxet General Party family, look for us on patreon.com or simply follow the link in the show notes. Until then, let's make some stuff with basil. After all that rain and all that sun, we have a ton of fruit and herbs coming into the season. A great year for melons and tomatoes. This is a wonderful idea for fresh watermelon and basil. It is so refreshing and makes a delicious mocktail if you exchange the liquor for lemonade or iced tea. Keep frozen watermelon in the freezer in general to use instead of ice in summer drinks or salads. This is my favorite version by Martha Stewart. For this cocktail, you will need 7 1/2 pounds seedless watermelon, rind removed, fruit cut into 1-inch cubes, 4 teaspoons superfine sugar, 6 ounces or 3/4 of a cup silver tequila, 24 basil leaves plus sprigs for garnish, 3 ounces, that's 1/4 cup plus 2 tablespoons, triple sec, 6 cups of small ice cubes. Step 1. Place 24 watermelon cubes on a baking sheet lined with parchment. Cover and freeze for at least 1 hour, up to 2 days. Step 2. Puree the remaining watermelon and the sugar in a blender until smooth. Pass through a sieve lined with cheesecloth into a bowl. You should have about 3 cups. Step 3. Place the tequila and basil in a glass pitcher and crush with a wooden spoon. Stir in the watermelon juice and the triple sec. Step 4. Place the watermelon cubes in glasses. Using a cocktail shaker, mix 3/4 of a cup margarita with 1 cup ice. Strain into the glass and repeat. Serve garnished with basil. I say, and deck or yard chair, and enjoy. I'm a bit peckish. Let's talk about pesto. Here we are at peak pesto time. Everything that goes with pesto is in season, and I'm here for it. Pesto on anything: tomatoes, sliced mozzarella, crackers, pizza, sandwiches, salads, or even pasta. I've been making pesto with my sister for a few years now, and it doesn't last from week to week at the General. We either sell out or it gets eaten up. But just in case you can't make it to me at the Pawtuxet Village Farmers Market, you can make it for your family and friends. It seems that my version is kind of a cross between 2 classic Italian recipes, so I'm going to share both. Pesto, in its best-known form, combines basil, pine nuts, garlic, grated Parmesan cheese, and olive oil. It is commonly used as a topping for pasta. Pesto made with the above ingredients is called pesto alla genovese, indicating that its origins lie in the northwestern Italian city of Genoa. The name comes from the Italian verb pestare, to crush or to grind. Pesto is traditionally made by grinding the garlic, pine nuts, and basil into a paste using a mortar and pestle, the latter of which is a related word. before adding the grated cheese and olive oil. Today, a food processor is often used instead of a mortar and pestle. Pesto can take other forms, however. For example, pesto modernese, pesto in the style of Modena, contains lard, garlic, and rosemary as a topping for pizza or focaccia, while pesto trapanese in the style of the Sicilian town of Trapani adds tomatoes and almonds to a base of garlic, olive oil, and basil. On its own, basil, the principal ingredient by volume of pesto, is quite healthful. Pine nuts, pignole, the secondary ingredient, are rich in oils, as are walnuts, the usual substitute if pine nuts are not available. In Italy, pesto is customarily a summer dish. If served with pasta, the noodles are usually bite-sized, such as rigatoni, fusilli, or gemelli. Pesto is easily made, especially if a food processor is used to combine the ingredients into a smooth sauce and does not require cooking. Pesto can be frozen, and home chefs often do so in ice trays so that they can add a cube or two to stock for a burst of flavor. Amalfi lemons are in season on the Amalfi coast in the summer, so it's not surprising that that area developed a pesto dish of their own. Only this one, lemon. We don't have those unbelievable Italian lemons, but I do have a recipe here from Milk Street. Check out spaghetti with lemon pesto. The lemons commonly available in the U.S. are more acidic than Amalfi's lemons. So, to make a lemon pesto that approximates the original, we use a little sugar to temper the flavor. For extra citrus complexity, we use lemon zest to the pasta cooking water. The oils from the zest lightly perfume the spaghetti, reinforcing the lemony notes of the pesto. Don't forget to remove the lemon zest from the boiling water before dropping in the pasta. If left as the spaghetti cooks, the zest may turn the water bitter, and the strips are a nuisance to remove from the strands of cooked noodles. For this recipe, you will need 4 lemons, kosher salt and ground black pepper, 1½ teaspoons white sugar, 1 pound spaghetti, 1/2 cup slivered almonds, 1 ounce without the rind Parmesan cheese cut into rough 1-inch pieces, plus finely grated Parmesan to serve, 1/2 cup extra virgin olive oil, plus a little more to serve, 2 tablespoons finely chopped fresh chives. Using a vegetable peeler, preferably a Y-style peeler, remove the zest from the lemons in long, wide strips. Try to remove only the colored portion of the peel, not the bitter white pith underneath. You should have about 3/4 cup zest strips. In a large pot, combine 2 quarts water, 1½ teaspoons salt, 1 teaspoon of sugar, and half of the zest strips. Bring to a boil and cook for 2 minutes. Then remove and discard the zest. Add the spaghetti and cook until al dente. Remove 1½ cups of the cooking water, then drain the pasta and return it to the pot. Meanwhile, in a food processor, combine the remaining zest strips, the almonds, Parmesan, and remaining 1/2 teaspoon sugar and 1/4 teaspoon each salt and pepper. Process until the mixture resembles coarse sand, about 10 to 20 seconds. Add the oil and process until the oil is just incorporated. The mixture will not be smooth. About another 10 seconds. Set aside until the pasta is ready. To the spaghetti in the pot, add the pesto and 3/4 cup of the reserved pasta water. Then toss to combine. Add more reserved pasta water as needed so the pesto coats the noodles. Toss in the chives, taste, and season with salt and pepper. Serve drizzled with additional oil and additional grated Parmesan on the side. If you wanted, you could take lemon zest and juice and add that to your traditional pesto recipe, which is what I do. I find that it brings a bit of freshness to the dish. That said, I disagree with the added sugar. The basil and the zest, I think, would make it sweet enough. Try it out, Or come and visit me at the store and have some of mine, and enjoy. I want to tell you about my friend Mike and his electromagnetic pinball museum and restoration arcade. It's an all-inclusive place to relax and share anything related to modern pinball and arcade games. A group of pinball and arcade fans with an addiction to games of all kinds and Lego too. $10 gets you free play on pinball and arcade games all day. You can find them at 881 Main Street, Pawtucket, Rhode Island, or online at www.electromagneticpinballmuseum.com. And now, a special House in the Corner reading of Edgar Allan Poe's The Cask of Amontillado. The 1,000 injuries of Fortunato I had borne as best I could, but when he ventured upon insult, I vowed revenge. You who know so well the nature of my soul will not suppose, however, that I gave utterance to a threat. At length I would be avenged. This was a point definitely settled, but the very definiteness with which it was resolved precluded the idea of risk. I must not only punish, but punish with impunity. A wrong is unredressed when retribution overtakes its redresser. It is equally unredressed when the avenger fails to make himself felt as such to him who has done the wrong. It must be understood that neither by word nor deed had I given Fortunato cause to doubt my goodwill. I continued, as was my wont, to smile in his face, and he did not perceive that my smile now was at the thought of his immolation. He had a weak point, this Fortunato. Although in other regards he was a man to be respected and even feared, he prided himself on his connoisseurship of wine. Few Italians have the true virtuoso spirit. For the most part, their enthusiasm is adopted to suit the time and opportunity, to practice imposture upon the British and Australian meuniers. In painting and gemmery, Fortunato, like his countrymen, was a quack. But in the matter of old wines he was sincere. In this respect I did not differ from him materially. I was skillful in the Italian vintages myself, and bought largely whenever I could. It was about dusk, one evening during the supreme madness of the carnival season, that I encountered my friend. He accosted me with excessive warmth, for he had been drinking much. The man wore motley. He had on a tightly fitted party-striped dress, and his head was surmounted by the conical cap and bells. I was so pleased to see him that I thought I should never have done wringing his hand. I said to him, "My dear Fortunato, you are luckily met. How remarkably well you are looking today. But I have received a pipe of what passes for Amontillado, and I have my doubts." "How?" said he. "Amontillado? A pipe? Impossible! In the middle of carnival?" "I have my doubts," I replied. "And I was silly enough to pay the full Amontillado price without consulting you in the matter. You were not to be found, and I was fearful of losing a bargain." "Amontillado? I have my doubts." "Amontillado?" "And I must satisfy them." "Amontillado. As you are engaged, I am on my way to Lucchese. If anyone has critical turn, it is he. He will tell me if Lucchese cannot tell Amontillado from sherry. And yet some fools will have it that his taste is a match for your own. Come on, let's go." "Whither?" "To your vaults." "My friend, no, I would not impose upon your good nature. I perceive you have an engagement, Lucchese." "I have no engagement. Come." "My friend, no, it is not the engagement, but the severe cold with which I perceive you are afflicted. The vaults are insufferably damp. They are encrusted with niter.
Let us go. Nevertheless, the cold is merely nothing. Amontillado! You must have been imposed upon. As for Lucchese, he could not distinguish sherry from Amontillado.
Thus speaking, Fortunato possessed himself of my arm. Putting on a mask of black silk and drawing a roquelaire about my person, I suffered him to hurry me to my palazzo. There were no attendants at home. They had absconded to make merry in honor of the time. I had told them that I should not return until the morning, and they had been given explicit orders not to stir from the house. These orders were sufficient, I well knew, to ensure their immediate disappearance, one and all, as soon as my back was turned. I took from the sconces 2 flambeaux, and giving one to Fortunato, bowed him through several suites of rooms to the archway that led into the vaults. I passed down a long and winding staircase, requesting him to be cautious as he followed. We came, at length, to the foot of the descent, and together stood on the damp ground of the catacombs of the Montresors. The gait of my friend was unsteady, and the bells upon his cap jingled as he strode.
"The pipe,"
said he. "It is further on," said I, "but observe the white webwork that gleams from these cavern walls." He turned towards me and looked into my eyes with 2 filmy orbs that distilled the rheum of intoxication. "Niter?" he asked at length. "Niter," I replied. "How long have you had that cough?" My poor friend found it impossible to reply for many minutes.
"It is nothing,"
he said at last. "Come," I said with decision. "We will go back. Your health is precious. You are rich, respected, admired, beloved. You are happy, as once I was. You are a man to be missed. For me it is no matter. We will go back. You will be ill, and I cannot be responsible. Besides, there is Lucchese."
"Enough,"
he said.
"The cough is a mere nothing. It will not kill me. I shall not die of a cough."
True, I replied. "And indeed, I had no intention of alarming you unnecessarily, but you should use all proper caution. A draught of this Medoc ought to defend us from the damps." Here I knocked off the neck of the bottle which I drew from a long row of its fellows that lay upon the mold. "Drink," I said, presenting him with the wine. He raised it to his lips with a leer. He paused and nodded to me familiarly, while his bells jingled. "I drink," he said, "to the buried that repose around us." "And I your long life." He again took my arm and we proceeded.
"These vaults," he said, "are extensive."
"The Montresors," I replied, "were a great and numerous family."
"I forget your arms."
"A huge human foot door in a field azure. The foot crushes the serpent, rampant, whose fangs are embedded in the heel."
"And the motto?"
"Nemo me impune lacessit."
"Good," he said.
The wine sparkled in his eyes and the bells jingled. My own fancy grew warm with the Medoc. We had passed through walls of piled bones, with casks and puncheons intermingling, into the innermost recesses of the catacombs. I paused again, and this time I made bold to seize Fortunato by an arm above the elbow. "The niter," I said. "See? It increases. It hangs like moss upon these vaults. We are now below the river's bed. The drops of moisture trickle among the bones. Come, we will go back ere it is too late. Your cough—"
"It is nothing," he said. "Let us go on, but first another draught of that Medoc."
I broke and reached him a flagon of de Grave. He emptied it in a breath. His eyes flashed with a fierce light. He laughed and threw the bottle upwards with a gesticulation I did not understand. I looked at him in surprise. He repeated the movement, a grotesque one.
"You do not comprehend?"
he said. "Not I," I replied.
"Then you are not of the Brotherhood."
"How?"
"You are not of the Masons."
"Oh, yes, I said. Yes.
"You? Impossible. A Mason?"
"A Mason," I replied.
"A sign?"
he said. "It is this," I answered, producing a trowel from beneath the folds of my roquelaire.
"You jest,"
he exclaimed.
recoiling a few paces. "But let us proceed to the Amontillado." "Be it so," I said, replacing the tool beneath my cloak and again offering him my arm. He leaned upon it heavily. We continued our route. We passed through a range of low arches, descended, passed on, and descending again, arrived at a deep crypt in which the foulness of the air caused our flambeau rather to glow than flame. At the most remote end of the crypt there appeared another less spacious. Its walls had been lined with human remains, piled to the vault overhead, in the fashion of the great catacombs of Paris. 3 sides of this interior crypt were still ornamented in this manner. From the 4th, the bones had been thrown down, and lay promiscuously upon the earth, forming at one point a mound of some size. Within the wall thus exposed, by the displacing of the bones, we perceived a still interior recess, in depth about 4 feet, in width 3, in height 6 or 7. It seemed to have been constructed for no especial use within itself, but formed merely the interval between 2 of the colossal supports of the roof of the catacombs, and was backed by one of their circumscribing walls of solid granite. It was in vain that Fortunato, uplifting his dull torch, endeavored to pry into the depths of the recess. Its termination the feeble light did not enable us to see. "Proceed," I said. "Herein is the Amontillado. As for Lucchesi—" "Is an ignoramus," interrupted my friend, as he stepped unsteadily forward, while I followed immediately at his heels. In an instant he had reached the extremity of the niche, and finding this progress arrested by the rock, stood stupidly bewildered. A moment more, and I had fettered him to the granite. In its surface were 2 iron staples, distant from each other about 2 feet, horizontally. From one of these depended a short chain, from the other a padlock. Throwing the links about his waist, it was but the work of a few seconds to secure it. He was too much astounded to resist. Withdrawing the key, I stepped back from the recess. "Pass your hand," I said, "over the wall. You cannot help feeling the nitre. Indeed, it is very damp. Once more, let me implore you to return. No? Then I will positively leave you. But I must first render you all the little attentions in my power." "Amontillado!" ejaculated my friend, not yet recovered from his astonishment. "True," I replied, "the Amontillado." As I said these words, I busied myself among the pile of bones, of which I have before spoken. Throwing them aside, I soon uncovered a quantity of building stone and mortar. With these materials, and with the aid of my trowel, I began vigorously to wall up the entrance of the niche. I had scarcely laid the first tier of the masonry when I discovered that the intoxication of Fortunato had in a great measure worn off. The earliest indication I had of this was a low moaning cry from the depth of the recess. It was not the cry of a drunken man. Then there was a long and obstinate silence. I laid the second tier, and the third, and the 4th, and then I heard the furious vibrations of the chain. The noise lasted for several minutes, during which, that I might hearken to it with more satisfaction, I ceased my labors, and sat down upon the bones. When at last the clanking subsided, I resumed the trowel and finished without interruption the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th tier. The wall was now nearly upon a level with my breast. I again paused, and holding the flambeau over the masonwork, threw a few feeble rays upon the figure within. A succession of loud and shrill screams bursting suddenly from the throat of the chained form seemed to thrust me violently back. For a brief moment I hesitated. I trembled. Unsheathing my rapier, I began to grope with it about the recess. But the thought of an instant reassured me. I placed my hand on the solid fabric of the catacombs and felt satisfied. I reapproached the wall. I replied to the yells of him who clamored. I re-echoed. I aided. I surpassed them in volume and in strength. I did this, and the clamor grew still. It was now midnight, and my task was drawing to a close. I had completed the 8th, the 9th, and the 10th tier.
I had finished a portion of the last and the 11th. There remained but a single stone to be fitted and plastered in. I struggled with its weight. I placed it partially in its destined position. But now there came from out the niche a low laugh that erected the hairs upon my head. It was succeeded by a sad voice, which I had difficulty in recognizing as that of the noble Fortunato. The voice said, "A very good joke indeed. An excellent jest. We will have many a rich laugh about it in the palazzo, over our wine." "The Amontillado," I said. "Yes, the Amontillado. But is it not getting late? Will they not be awaiting us at the palazzo, the Lady Fortunato and the rest? Let us be gone." "Yes," I said. "Let us be gone." "Oh, for the love of God, Montresor." "Yes," I said, "for the love of God." But to these words I hearkened in vain for a reply. I grew impatient. I called aloud, "Fortunato!" No answer. I called again, "Fortunato!" No answer still. I thrust a torch through the remaining aperture and let it fall within. There came forth in return only a jingling of bells. My heart grew sick, on account of the dampness of the catacombs. I hastened to make an end to my labor. I forced the last stone into its position. I plastered it up. Against the new masonry, I re-erected the old rampart of bones. For half a century, no mortal has disturbed them. In pace requiescat. Edgar Allan Poe. Thank you once again for joining us today at the Pawtuxet General. If you would like to reach out with a question, suggestion, local ghost story, our email is jess@pawtuxetgeneral.com. Please join us at the Pawtuxet Village Farmers Market on Saturday mornings from 9 until 12. I'll see you then. But if not, I'll meet you right back here next time at the Pawtuxet General. A Something for Posterity production, pre-recorded in Pawtuxet.